Many times when we're talking about movies and things that we've seen, you have a very casual, oh, have you seen blah, blah, blah? And it's something like The Forbidden Zone. And I am like, no, I haven't seen blah, blah, blah. And that sort of ends the conversation. So I thought maybe for this one, I should go ahead and watch Forbidden Zone since I can anticipate that you are going to bring it up. And so I went ahead and did that. And
how deeply do you regret the experience?
What the hell, Greg?
Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice.
It's showtime.
This is Midnight Local. I'm Greg, and she is...
I am Meredith.
And we're the podcast about things and movies and stuff. And today, because there's a new Beetlejuice coming out that I don't think anybody even knew was coming out until it was already coming out, we're going to talk about Beetlejuice and Forbidden Zone. And maybe probably more the Forbidden Zone.
Oh, really? You think we're... You got a lot to say about Forbidden Zone, huh?
I have thoughts. I don't have a lot to say.
You have thoughts. All right. Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, we should kind of marry those two.
Well, and that was what I was wondering. Just for reference, let me set this up and then I'm going to throw it to you.
Sure.
Beetlejuice, very great movie, getting a sequel, directed by Tim Burton. Don't know who wrote it. I think Tim Burton may have had something to do with the writing. Composed music by Danny Elfman.
Correct. The Elfman.
The Elfman. Danny and Beetlejuice. And also a lot of the details about the character of Beetlejuice, like his age and his dialogue, was improvised by Michael Keaton.
No, we gotta get closer. Move in with you for a while. Get to be real pals. You know what I'm saying? And save that guy for later.
Who a lot of people forget was like a comedic actor. That was like his deal.
Did stand up. I actually didn't know that until I was looking into this movie that he did stand up.
Yep. And so we were talking about Beetlejuice, and I said, have you ever seen Forbidden Zone? Because it's not a thing I hear anybody ever mention in relation to Danny Elfman. Now, Danny Elfman, and I have more setup to do here, member of a band, had a band called Oingo Boingo. Oingo Boingo.
Was it a band or was it like a performing artist group?
Oingo Boingo was a band. It's coming along. You're going to see what happens here. Oingo Boingo was a band. We're going to work backwards in time, right? So Danny Elfman is a film composer. Before that, he had a band
called... What time
is
it? When?
It's
80s.
a time.
Late 80s.
Yeah, it's the 80s. Danny Elfman is now a film composer with a very unique style, specific style. Before that, he had a band called Oingo Boingo that did movie soundtrack songs because he was using the band as a vehicle for film composition. He acquired the band Oingo Boingo from his brother Richard Elfman, because Richard Elfman, before it was a band, had a cabaret show that he did in a burlesque way up and down California, and I guess mostly in the Southern California area, called The Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo, and lost interest in it. And he said, Danny, you can take the act. And Danny said, I'll take the musicians, and we will now be Oingo Boingo. But there's a little bit even more to that, because Richard Elfman, weird artsy guy extraordinaire, knew that his brother Danny wanted to do film composing for a career, and he said, I know, I'll make a movie for you to compose, and it's called The Forbidden Zone. And that's how you get backwards from Danny Elfman to Forbidden Zone.
That is the history. That is the work backwards.
That's the work back. While we were talking about doing a thing here about the Beetlejuice, I was saying, hey, you ever see Forbidden Zone? Because Danny Elfman and Tim Burton are like a duo. I don't think that they don't. I think that Tim Burton always works with Danny. They're a duo. They're really like a creative pair. And the reason I ask this
I'm waiting for the question.
The reason I ask this is probably threefold, but let's start with fold one first. I think there's a lot of Forbidden Zone in Beetlejuice. And so I wonder if Danny Elfman and, I don't know how they met. Maybe you do. Maybe you looked into this. Elfman and the Burton, how did they meet? Were they friends before, early on, like when they were coming up? Was Burton hanging around the set while they were making The Forbidden Zone? Did Danny Elfman sit down and show Burton The Forbidden Zone one day? Was just like, hey, Tim, you want to see this movie I was involved with? And Tim Burton said, you've almost got a movie there. Why don't we do a thing I'm going to call The Beetlejuice?
I don't think it was quite like that, but I do think that Burton was hanging around and saw a show or something created by Oingo Boingo and liked it a lot and was heavily influenced by it.
Did you look? That's something you read?
My spouse Ray is a very big Tim Burton fan and
Burton
remembers very specifically that there was an Oingo Boingo show that he had gone to, and that sort of kicked things off. I was looking for something specifically about that. The closest I found was like a think piece on him and on Elfman and on their relationship, and Oingo Boingo is like the first thing that sort of comes up. So there was...
If he's going to Oingo Boingo acts and shows in the early days, then yes, Forbidden Zone was on his mind.
Yeah, I 100% he saw it. I have no question about that. So yeah, you mentioned this while we were talking about it. And I said many times when we're talking about movies and things that we've seen, you have a very casual, oh, have you seen blah, blah, blah? And it's something like The Forbidden Zone. And I am like, no, I haven't seen blah, blah, blah. And that sort of ends the conversation. So I thought maybe for this one, I should go ahead and watch Forbidden Zone since I can anticipate that you are going to bring it up. And so I went ahead and did that. And
how deeply do you regret the experience?
What the hell, Greg? No, I don't regret it at all. Honestly, I wrote down two things while I was watching The Forbidden Zone in like the first 10 minutes. One was, it looks like a really fucked up version of Sesame Street.
It's
when they're walking by the school, into the school.
Repulsive to look at. It hurts me to look at this movie.
Sort of. And then, well...
Everything looks so greasy.
I would say that, except for the Queen, the woman who plays the Queen, who's on the cover art of the movie. I'm really drawn to her specifically.
You should be. She's in Crybaby.
Oh, she's the mother.
She's Crybaby's aunt. She's Crybaby's adopted mom.
It's an aunt, adopted mom. Okay, yes.
Down at Turkey Point!
There was something very familiar about her, and that is it. And then I also wrote that I've never taken acid, and now I'm pretty sure I don't ever need to.
You probably don't, yeah.
Yeah. I mean...
this movie, from what I understand, this film would be a very bad trip.
Yeah, right.
Worst possible version of it.
And that's, I mean, kind of cheeky. Like, of course, like through journeys of film school and things like that, I've seen things like it. And I think like wonderful things came from the late 70s, early 80s, after the studio system like sort of devolved or disappeared. And people started making weird ass shit.
First off, I love the weird shit. I love John Waters, and I think that, we've just established as a John Waters linkage here.
100%.
And in fact, I would say that Squeeze It, that one character who's always like flapping his arms like a chicken, he's right out of Pink Flamingos. Like that's a John Waters character, basically. I forget his first name. His last name is Squeeze It. No, is Squeeze It his first name?
They call him Squeeze It. Yeah, throughout the movie they call him Squeeze It.
And he has
he always kind of looks like he's always kind of shaking, but from a lot of angles, it just always looks like he's masturbating. No?
Well, he's always flapping his wings, and yes,
right. But like from a lot of angles, it just
awful.
Looks like
it's horrible. It's so difficult to watch this movie. So it was shot in 2-strip Technicolor, which is a technology that precedes 3-strip Technicolor, and it looks awful. For many, many, many years, Richard Elfman did not have the money to finish it in 2-strip Technicolor, so it was released in black and white. I've never seen it in black and white. I've only actually seen the Technicolor version to my memory, which was released in 2008 because he finally got the money to do the Technicolor re-release.
I didn't know it was that late. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, like with Technicolor, you shoot black and white. You just shoot black and white multiple times. So you have a camera in 3-strip where there's a prism behind the lens that splits the light. It's a trichromatic prism that splits it into red, green, and blue. And then you've got 3 gates and 3 shutters that are all synchronized, running 3 strips of black and white film. And so one black and white film has the red, one black and white film has the green, one has the blue. And then in post-processing, you take those 3 strips, you tint them with their color, and then you somehow do an optical to lay them on top of each other, and bickety-bam-boom, you've got Technicolor color. It's a black and white technology that produces a color illusion. Prior to that was 2-strip Technicolor. Instead of red, green, and blue, it was like magenta and teal or something. I forget. Like it's 2 like secondary colors.
You pose that as a question. I mean, like this is the part of the show I'm just gonna call like Greg Gets Technical and just like let you just have at it. And
so he wanted to shoot it in 2-strip Technicolor, which is pretty wild. Because he couldn't just like look that up on the internet to know about that. This guy, Richard Elfman, in the 70s really had to know his early film history all on his lonesome. He didn't have Wikipedia. I sometimes think that the makeup that the actors are wearing is because of ideas that they had about how you should apply makeup to your face for 2-strip Technicolor processing. Because
wow, you really, yeah. I think they were just being funny for each other.
you think they're just being gross. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
like, famously with 3-strip Technicolor, and I forget her name, there was a woman who worked for Technicolor, and if you were shooting in Technicolor, she was on set. There was only one of her, and she had supervision over your entire production design. And she would just be like, no, we're changing the color of that. And like the director was like, I don't like that. Too bad. Now you have a black and white movie. Fuck off.
Wow.
And like she was like, and so she's like this, there's documentaries and books written about her, and I feel bad I don't know her name, but like she was like this secret and apparently nasty production designer who just like had carte blanche over all of these movies. In fact,
Natalie Kalmus.
I think she's the reason that the ruby slippers are ruby,
Oh,
for example.
Yeah.
Because they're silver in the book.
Natalie Kalmus was the executive head of technical art department and credited
is.
as the director of color consultant.
Yeah.
So that must be her. This felt like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory to me.
Oh, interesting. Not at all to me, but I get what you're saying. Like the mad chaos of it. I mean, and like that's one thing too.
It's not just the chaos of the action. It is the look of the film that I'm
You think
talking
so?
about.
Oh,
Yeah, I think
I
so.
didn't get that. I didn't get that.
I'll
For
put
me,
them
that
next to
doesn't.
each other and see if that stands up. In my brain, that's true, but I don't know
Yeah.
if that holds up.
I'm not gonna. I mean, I don't want to negate your own feelings, but I just don't know that I get that. I think that you're valid. I'm just.
Fair enough.
I wouldn't make that connection.
Sure.
I do want to like point out too, for people who are interested in this movie is like transgressive cinema. It is the definition, in my opinion, of transgressive cinema, and I think it might belong on a shelf next to something like Cannibal Corpse, where Cannibal Holocaust, which we've discussed and you have vowed never to watch, and you probably shouldn't watch it.
It's not that you've described that to me, and I have not watched it. I don't. That makes it sound like it's horrific in some way.
No.
It's not at all.
It's a movie that was probably made with the almost sole intention of offending and pissing you off.
I don't know if I agree with that either. For me, it felt like the hard version of like Monty Python or like Hedwig
Okay.
and the Angry Inch, and I put it in
Much
that
more
category.
favorable opinion about it.
Yeah, well, I put it in that category because like Hedwig and the Angry Inch in particular, because I know more about that movie. I actually don't know a ton about the Monty Python crew, and the reason
Isn't that an album film? It's like a music film, or am I mistaken?
it is, but like
Or am I thinking of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert?
maybe both, but
Yeah.
no, it's like Hedwig is a musical.
Yeah.
Priscilla's not a musical.
Okay.
So Hedwig, he developed this character like over years and years of going to like an underground drag show and performing as Hedwig. And in performing as Hedwig, he sort of created all of the aspects of the character and eventually went on to make a movie about it. And it's sort of it's taken from there. And it's still like kind of a niche thing. It has its audience, but like it was a performance art piece that he decided might have a vaster audience and went ahead and made an indie film, and it did. Like a lot of people took to it and a lot of people are offended by it. That has a story, that has a linear story. This is the much more I'm not putting them in the same camp necessarily, but I do think like they're derived sort of from the same thing. It's like
Same place.
Everyone I know who went to NYU sort of ended up doing things like this. Like
Yeah.
NYU told them, you make art for you.
Yeah.
You are the only reason to make art. And they went on to make experimental art and things like that. This feels like a group of NYU kids that got together and thought, you know what? Everyone's going to think this is awesome. We have to film this.
So officially, and I think we should actually this episode is probably going to be mostly packaged around Beetlejuice, so we should get back to that at some point. We will. Officially, though, Richard Elfman said, I'm leaving Oingo Boingo. I'm done with the act. I'm not going to do it anymore. The cabaret is over. However, we're going to make a movie of what the experience of seeing an Oingo Boingo cabaret night was like. Mm-hmm. And that's what this is. It's supposed to be a time capsule of that. It is difficult to follow. And I've seen it like 10 times now, and I'm only just now starting to understand what's going on in this movie.
Yeah.
And actually, I think when we watched it the other night, I was on edibles, and I think that helped a lot. I think that trying to watch this movie sober does not work. Your brain, it doesn't happen for you. It's a difficult thing.
Yeah. This movie takes you on a trip, and you should probably help it along in some sort of way. I didn't when I watched it because I have an infant, and those moments of availability for those sorts of things are hard to come by.
Definitely the definition of a midnight movie.
There's every episode of Midnight Local, there's a moment in which I'm like, my mother-in-law and my mother are listening to this, and I wish they were. And this is that moment. But that is.
You just got to tell your relatives to stop watching your work.
Nah. It'll be okay.
I get into it with my mom
I'm
all
old
the
enough,
time.
it
I'm
doesn't
like,
matter. I'm
have you
almost
seen
40.
stand-up? Because like How to Drink is kind of
right.
stand-up, and
You don't want it.
I am related to you, so watch out.
Yeah. You're on someone else's journey. You're on the Oingo Boingo group. Had a lot of fun making this shit, and they're still in this movie having a lot of fun making it, and you can either join them on that journey or you cannot. Those are your options.
That's it. So just a couple of observations about this movie. The sets are made of like paper, literally.
And cardboard.
Yep. The movie is filled with racial stereotypes, horrifying ones.
Yeah, there is blackface in the movie, unfortunately.
Yeah. And also like black people playing bad racial stereotypes. But I think that they were, at that point in 1979 or 1980, first off, these are all members of Oingo Boingo, as far as I'm aware. Like there was like a cast of hundreds or something for this act. And I think that they're all having fun with it.
I think so.
There's a lot of Nazi imagery in it. And, I checked on this to make sure that they had the license here, but the Elfmans are Jewish, so they can make those jokes if they want. The two guys, I can't stand the two guys, the twins. That's the hardest part of the movie to get through, with the guys boxing and they go.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. Oh, for me, it's the old guy. It's the old guy. Every time he shows up on screen, I don't want to see
the old
you.
guy that plays a kid in the. I hate him too. He's awful. Yeah, and he's like so nasty as well. Squeeze It, very woke.
I didn't think he was going to be the hero of the movie at all. I didn't think we were going to see him at all. And he's your guy. He's the one you're with.
Yeah. But also, like, the first introduction to Squeeze It is everybody's making fun of him for having.
Yeah, in a garbage can. He's
but no.
Grouch.
Okay, so
Oscar the Grouch.
Blink and you miss it. Other kids are picking on him because his brother decided to dress up like a girl.
Is trans.
Yeah, and Squeeze It, that's exactly right. Squeeze It is like, no, I have a sister.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, 1980. Holy shit.
Yeah, and Squeeze It is also just like abused by his mother and like trying just dealing with some shit.
The chicken boy, his mom is like maybe a hooker coming home with sailors, and like she's like, you want to see my chicken boy?
Rocky Horror is another.
Well, it's a
one we
midnight
should bring
movie,
up.
right?
Yeah,
exactly.
100%.
It's
and it
right
was
in that.
Actually, like, Midnight Movie isn't just like, a movie you watch in the basement with your friends. Like, this movie was actually shown at midnight in theaters. It was a midnight movie.
It's a real midnight movie. The real deal. The King.
Yeah, the little person. I actually don't have his
He's
name.
from. Famously from Fantasy Island. He's the plane boss. That's him. And he's great in this. Oh, Mandelier. Mandelier is perhaps one of the strangest and most upsetting parts of the film, in my opinion. The chandelier, who is a man naked hanging from the ceiling and rolling upside down, and later becomes a skeleton because he's a little too interested in some stuff that's going on. He shouldn't have been looking. All
right. So to move this into Beetlejuice,
I just have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Do you ogle? Are you an ogler?
An ogler.
Do you appreciate the nudity in this film, or do you find it to be offensive?
Yeah.
You like an ogle? You like a good ogle there, Meredith? You like the ladies?
I'm just like, so for me, this is like, you see the soundstage floor. Like, this movie is a bunch of people at the end of the day getting together. They were all throwing their paychecks back into the movie.
Let's put on a show.
Sets. Yeah, painting sets on their own. Every person who is there wants to be doing exactly what they're doing so badly and is making major sacrifices to do it. So in this case, they're performing exactly what they want to perform. And I love it. I'm happy about it.
I'm here for it.
Yeah.
That princess is something else. Let me tell you.
Like no one's taking this part thinking like this is your ticket to Hollywood, baby.
I gotta tell you
like
what. I think that's very sweet of you, but I do think that there's a good chance that it was
you
that.
think
kid.
so?
I
don't
do. I mean,
think
these are all LA people, and they're doing a
Yeah.
stage burlesque show, and you don't know how you're going to get discovered, and you have an opportunity to get in front of a camera. It was really hard back then, and you're doing this Oingo Boingo thing on weekends, and you're hoping that there's a scout somewhere. I don't know. I think
a version, sure, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think
know.
I think both things could be true, or either thing could be true. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive concepts.
From everything I read, there was like so much love and just sacrifice and people reinvesting and making sure that they were free. It's
cool.
really, really hard to make something like this with a large cast
Huge
all the way
cast.
through without commitment, because people get other jobs, they peel off. Oh, I couldn't finish the movie. But like people, whatever group this was that was doing this stuff, they really wanted to be a part of it.
The finale sequence, I didn't realize it even connect this till recently, but like that's a cast like a Busby Berkeley movie, like 100 dancing girls topless come screaming into set.
Well, and here's where we like can tie it back to Beetlejuice, the movie that we think we're talking about. Danny Elfman comes out as the devil, the demon.
Yes.
In this dance number, and in my opinion does the Oogie Boogie song from Nightmare Before Christmas.
So it's Cab Calloway, and he's lip syncing, and he's doing Cab Calloway's dance, and Oogie Boogie draws on Cab Calloway as well.
So intensely. Yeah. There's no way in my mind they did not have that moment of this movie in their mind every moment they were making Oogie Boogie.
You don't think they were thinking of Cab Calloway?
When they were making Oogie Boogie. Well, I don't know. I'm actually not familiar with what you're talking about with Cab Calloway.
So like the number he performs in this movie, or one of the numbers he performs, is literally a recording of Cab Calloway. And I think they maybe changed a couple lyrics doing Minnie the Moocher. He was a jazz singer, band leader at the Cotton Club in the 30s and 40s and maybe even earlier. Famous guy. Heidi, 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 ho.
Heidi, 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 ho.
And actually was rotoscoped and utilized in a lot of Fleischer animations, which would have been contemporary to sort of the two-strip Technicolor process that they're hearkening to in this film. And so I think that, I mean, of course, Danny Elfman was in this and also worked on Nightmare
so
Before
from
Christmas.
1 to 2 to 3, they're all together, but
Elfman is referring, if it's Elfman's hand, he's referring to Cab Calloway in both cases.
Okay. Those three scenes feel like versions of each other. Yeah.
Yes. Agreed. There was one other, the animation. I always forget that there's so much animation in this movie and how like
there is,
weird and kind of grindhouse it is, and how much I love that. It's so cool.
Yeah.
The lips look so cool, the animated lips, and it feels like a reference to Rocky Horror as well, by the way.
Which was Rocky Horror before
well, it opens
this?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And it opens
is.
with Magenta's lips.
Yeah,
or no, Columbia's lips. I think it's Columbia.
This movie was like, I've seen two dates where I've seen 1980 and 1982, and I think it was made earlier and then like got its release in 82. But
I think it took him a long time to get this out.
Yeah.
It's an insane film.
Also really appreciate the tagline for this movie. I think it's my favorite tagline to date. It's just a chaotic musical fantasy. That's all you need from a tagline.
It's very accurate. It's super duper accurate. So everybody rush out and go watch Forbidden Zone. It is available on streaming.
I actually was shocked that like I have the YouTube TV and I searched for it and the special edition came up. I was able to watch it right there. I didn't really have to look really hard for it. So
the other thing about this movie that I find actually really difficult is how much time we spend with Frenchie, because her accent is so over the top. I have a hard time following what she says.
But that's where it feels like high school comedy to me. Like we used to in high school, my theater friends used to sit around in a living room and sort of do this at each other and think it was really funny and think that other people would find it funny too. And
yes.
That's what I feel like this movie is. We didn't have the means nor was it the point in time in which we could have done something like that. But if we could have...
I assume that a lot of these characters are characters that were making appearances in the Oingo Boingo
I think
cabaret
so.
show. I think
100%.
Frenchie was probably a staple of the stage show. Her brother, the old man in the Boy Scout uniform, is probably, what's his name? Lightning? Flash. Flash was probably a staple. Squeeze It was probably a staple. Like, I bet all those characters were staples of the show. And I'll bet that the guy who did Squeeze It would come out on stage as Squeeze It's sister sometimes, right?
Yeah. Well, now we're getting into 30 minutes, but I feel like the one scene I could do without in Forbidden Zone is the opening scene around the dinner table, because I feel like it's all these characters that are established in Oingo Boingo talking in this way that is too insider for me, that I'm not getting there. And as soon as they leave that and they go to the schoolroom, then I'm in it. Then I'm with you on a journey. Before that, I'm just like,
what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You almost, if you cut that from the movie, you don't lose anything. Or cut it way down, and you get the audience into where they need to be to go for the ride. I think you're absolutely right.
Maybe it's a mistake for me to watch the movies that you watch, because then we're 30 minutes into an episode about Beetlejuice talking about the Forbidden Zone.
So do you see connective tissue between this and Beetlejuice?
100%. Yeah.
You do. Okay.
Absolutely.
The whole underworld thing. Well, certainly the music, right? And so the music is such a big character in both of these movies. People don't, I mean, obviously Danny Elfman's score is iconic, but I don't think people think about it as a character in the movie that often. And it is, and it's a direct connection here between these two things. Also, I saw an interview where Elfman was talking about doing the score for Beetlejuice, and it was like the first time he had like an orchestra doing what he told them to do. And he was like, I wrote this tempo, this bum 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 bum, and like people were blacking out trying to record it. No one told me that you can't do that with an orchestra. That oboes have to breathe. They can't just like
I've
without
never heard
stopping.
that.
Yeah, that was a
Wow,
recent little
incredible.
clip I saw. Speaking of, by the way, since I don't want to forget to ask you this, Ray, giant fan of the Beetlejuice and the Tim Burton. What'd she think of Forbidden Zone?
We didn't get to watch it together. Yeah, we didn't. Sorry, having an infant, it is hard. One of us has to sacrifice. I think there were snippets that were watched, but no, I'm sorry, we didn't get to. I can't give you that analysis, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because like in my head, one of my things about Forbidden Zone was that like, oh, I feel like it's probably like Danny Elfman's dirty little secret. Like, I don't think his fans would approve. But then I watched it and I was like, you know what? Like, if you can accept that a lot of the the stereotypes and some of that is just like shock kind of transgression horror, I don't know that this is a cancelable film, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, the parts that Ray walked in on, I think the reaction was, oh, if I was in the 70s and could do whatever I wanted, like, this is the type of stuff I really wanted to make. Yeah. Or, well, it was released in the 80s. I feel like it must have been. Oh, you're talking about Beetlejuice.
No, I'm talking about
Forbidden Zone, about Forbidden Zone. Yeah, late 70s.
I think they slapped it together and filmed it quick and then spent a lot of time in post on it. So I would say it was probably born and raised in 1980.
Yeah.
Maybe 79.
Like, I think Beetlejuice might be one of the Burton films that Ray's seen the least.
Oh, what?
Yeah, I think it's, well.
What does she even like of his?
Edward Scissorhands is the favorite. Is the absolute favorite. Yeah.
Fair enough. I don't know that I've ever actually sat down and watched that all the way through.
Never. Oh, it's wonderful.
I did once. Yeah. I want to like it so much more than I do. I'm not into it.
Well, now is probably not the time to come to that movie. When you're an other teen, like that is the time to find that movie.
Yeah. I was like a real goth kid in high school.
Yeah.
And I missed The Crow, and I like tried to revisit it later, when I was no longer goth kid, and I watched it. I was like, this movie fucking sucks.
I'm gonna do it. Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
PG, hour 32 minutes. Tagline: say it once, say it twice, but do we dare say it 3 times?
Tagline does nothing for the film.
No,
unless you've seen the movie, it means nothing.
It means nothing. I can't believe that was actually the tagline that was on promotional posters before the movie came out. I find that hard to believe too. Yeah.
I think the tagline was probably Gina Davis.
Well, who shocked to find out that she was one of the first people that actually said yes to this movie. Read the script, was like, I get it, I'm in. Alec Baldwin took convincing. Michael Keaton took convincing. Winona Ryder probably not, because she was a teenager and was just happy to be cast in anything.
Give me the work.
But Gina Davis was the one who read the script and was like, sign me up. And I love her for that.
That's awesome. She pretty daring. She's pretty daring in her choices.
Yeah.
She doesn't get enough credit for that. Oh, shit. We've put it down. We got to do Earth Girls Are Easy.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that
Absolutely.
if you understand that she said yes to that, then Beetlejuice, she would have said yes to Forbidden Zone.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I had no idea that she and Jeff Goldblum had a relationship
Married.
for years after Earth Girls Are Easy. I learned that while looking at
I
stuff
think
for
that
this
they were
movie.
married while making Earth Girls Are Easy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think their relationship was in that they were in the film. They were in the film.
All right. We'll cover that in an episode about
and then-
Earth Girls Are Easy, but we are going to talk about Beetlejuice.
They did a movie together that's got to be one of the worst movies ever made, but they did it because they can work together. And I'm pretty sure it's Transylvania 65000 is the movie that they did. Are they both in that? Or maybe that's like the other one where he's a psychic. It's something, I forget the name of it, but it's
Never heard
horrible.
of
It's
it.
impossible to watch.
Yeah.
Goldblum, mixed feelings. Moving on. Gina Davis, feelings not mixed. Not at all.
Not
Love
mixed.
her. Love the Davis. Love it.
This was a tidbit that I never heard of her that I love. So her name is spelled Geena, and the reason that is because her parents were scared that if they spelled it Gina, people would pronounce her name Gina and like vagina, and were worried about that, and so they spelled it Ena.
Were her parents like quasi-literate?
Sort of Puritan, like puritanical.
No, I don't mean that, but like you see Gina, it's like it just looks as equally likely to be Gina as it does Gina. I don't
They
know.
did not want people accidentally calling her Gina, and so they put two E's in there. And I think for her, she tells that story because it was like, I was named for a fear of saying this word about the female anatomy, and like I'm not going to live my life that way. She's the founder of the Gina Davis Institute, and
Yeah, she's a fighter.
gender media equality, and she's done a lot of research about how we can better express or talk about or portray genders and minorities in film, and also almost was in the 2000 Summer Olympics for archery. She's a total badass.
That's crazy.
You don't know that about her?
Why would I know that about her? I don't have a book on Gina Davis over here.
She
Didn't know that.
she tried out for the Olympic team in archery, and she was 24th out of 300 women vying for an Olympic spot in 2000.
Damn. Good for her.
She's awesome.
She could rock a bow.
She does what she wants. Yeah, she's awesome.
Alec Baldwin needed convincing. Of course he did. I'm always surprised to hear that at Michael Keaton, because what an iconic role for him. But of course, on paper, it didn't look that way because the character was apparently mostly improvisation, even down to the costume. He said that he didn't want to do the part. I've seen this in an interview, until he like went and put the costume together himself and looked at it in the mirror. And I think maybe even went as far as to get the makeup done and was like, all right, yeah, I get this guy now. Like,
Interesting.
Yeah. Very high level of, for a guy who's like crossing over from doing stand-up comedy. There's actually
To play a dude that died hundreds of years ago and make sex jokes. Like,
yeah, exactly.
the character has like not even 15 minutes of screen time.
Isn't that crazy?
So
He's the title character of the film.
yeah, well, and like I know there were other titles that were thrown around for this movie, haunted house type titles that are kind of lame. I don't know though. What I haven't seen is where in the process of making this movie they fell on him. Like, was it his performance? Did they realize sometime in the writing that it was going to be him? You don't even really see him until 25 minutes into the movie.
Yeah. He's like,
And then he steals the whole show.
he's amazing. Well, and what a great, so Sylvia Sweeney, by the way, right? Sylvia Sweeney?
Sylvia Sidney.
Sylvia Sidney, which is a name of import because I don't know what you're doing for daycare up there, but when we had Sydney, we found people who had a kid around the same time as us, and we split a nanny after we all hit it off, and we're friends for life, and their daughter is Sylvia. So
Okay.
it was Sydney and Sylvia.
Oh,
and they're
Sylvia
like,
Sidney.
I don't know, there's probably a term from that from the old days or whatever, like nursery sisters or whatever, or, she's great to always love to see someone kind of working into their, I don't know, like it's just cool to be like, oh wow, like that person from all of those movies that, modern audiences have forgot. The production design, of course, in Beetlejuice is second to none. I mean, Beetlejuice is a masterclass in filmmaking. From even what
Yeah.
you were saying, about like not, you don't even see him until 25 minutes in. That's Jaws. That's
sure.
that's how you do the thing. That's Alien. That's how you do it. That's the right way to do it. You know, to the big bad has to wait to come into the film. I think a lot of Beetlejuice flew right over my head when I was a kid watching it.
Oh yeah.
I watched that movie a lot, and like the whole thing about trying to sell the house, like I didn't pay attention to that.
The passage of time is also something that never occurred to me as a kid. Like,
Yeah.
they go into the waiting room,
Yep.
where all the other dead people are, and they come out months later,
Possibly
like,
years.
Yeah, there's the idea of the passage of time was lost on me completely as a young person watching this movie.
Yeah, I mean, and it does kind of beat you over the head with it a little bit, like when he goes outside and it's full of sandworms and then gets dragged back in.
Comes back,
It's
she says
hours.
it's been hours.
Oh my God, how are we not talking about Catherine O'Hara?
If there's a perfect actress for me, I think it's her.
She's
I
so
think
good.
She's my favorite person to watch in
Wonderful.
anything. I'll never miss anything she does.
Okay, here's a fun thing about that movie. You are supposed to hate her aesthetics.
But I must express myself. If you don't let me gut out this house and make it my own, I will go insane and I will take you with me.
I love them. I want her to do my interior decorating. I want her weird leather fireplace and like strange nightmare angles, like all of that. I want that. I think that I don't really want her sculptures, but like everything else is great.
Yeah, the sculptures, but the porch with the fake window
Want
that they
it.
sit in front of
I want
outside. There were two houses in the town that I grew up in like suburban Illinois, and it was like a thing if you were driving around with your friends on a Friday night. You'd be like, oh, let's go up to the weird houses, just drive by them and look at them. And they were built in the late 90s or mid 90s, and they were this. And when I was watching this movie, I found them on Zillow, and for the very first time in my entire life went inside. It was a joy.
Delia
but
Dietz's
just like
house.
the embellishments of the 90s are something really special.
Hold your horses. This movie is coming out in 88. This is an 80s film.
I know, but the house feels like the beginning of what was about to happen in the modernism of the 90s.
So except for in color palette, you know, in the forms and shapes, a lot of what she's got going on there is Memphis School, which is I guess postmodern design school out of Milan that references Memphis, the capital of ancient Egypt. And I always think of it as like Pee Wee Herman, right? So like Delia Dietz, Memphis, Pee Wee Herman, all of those 80s design choices are kind of like very much deep down in my bones. And I love them. And so I loved it here as well.
And maybe this is why they become mainstream. They really do, like through the 90s. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, Memphis went from Vogue to what the fuck is that? Very quickly. But it's been having some kind of like a little revival here. I wish you could get like reproductions of the pieces affordably. You cannot. Did you grew up with Beetlejuice?
I did, yeah, which I'm shocked by because I was not allowed to watch movies like Pretty Woman or Kindergarten Cop, but I was allowed to watch Beetlejuice because it is, Kindergarten Cop is rated R. Beetlejuice is rated PG.
It's insane.
He uses the word fuck in the movie, and I actually looked this up. This is pre-PG-13.
Yeah.
I don't even think you could say fucking PG-13 once it happened, though. Maybe once. Maybe you could get it once. But like Spaceballs in 1987, Big in 1988, and Caddyshack 2 in 1988 are the only other movies with F-bombs that have a PG rating.
I can't believe you know that. So there's a big difference in usage. If you use it in a connotation that implies intercourse, like you were fucking her.
Fucking, yeah.
That's or did you fuck her or him? We can make it equal opportunity here. That is a hard R. That's an immediate R, but like, oh, holy fuck, what are we doing here? That is a potential for PG-13 clearance as far as I understand.
There are the light undertones in the very beginning of this movie of fertility issues. Like the whole reason they go up to the house, I never caught this before. This is the first time I've caught this, but they're having trouble conceiving. And I think they're trying to go up to like take the pressure off to get up there. Yep. They talk
I thought he
about
had like some kind of nervous breakdown.
They talk about how they've been like trying and they're just gonna like
Gina Davis and
yeah, What'd you
I
think
thought you meant the Dietzes. I was like, they have a teenage daughter. That's fucking weird.
Well, and is she
Yeah.
Catherine O'Hara's daughter, or is Catherine O'Hara a second wife?
It's not. I think that I think it could go either way. You know, she does say she's not my mom.
Yeah,
but
I
you
think
never
that
get
her
clarification.
mom has died, which is
on
where
it.
the morbidity comes from.
That could be the case.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you get a ton of clarity on that, honestly. Like, she might have just been saying that in an edgy way, just like, I reject her as a mother. Like, it could have been that.
She calls her by the first name. She doesn't like there's a scene the ghosts are trying to scare her from the second room, and she thinks it's her parents having sex, and she's like, how do you sleep with that woman? Seeing it through this lens this time, the relationship with a Winona Ryder, the desire to not scare her, to like protect her, makes a lot more sense. Like, they have this daughter for the first time.
It does. Do you see Delia as like a villain in this movie?
I can't.
Me either.
I cannot.
And I don't think I ever did.
No,
I just kind of love her.
they are the connective tissue between the comedy that the ghosts are serving you. The comedy between Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis is so corny, and then Delia and Otho show up, and it like comes to this new level where it's like the corny mixed with improv. When they open the closet and they're hanging there, and they're but it's not that they're hanging there.
These
It's that the closet
clothes.
is small. No, it's the closet's too small.
We just have to pray the other closets are bigger than this one.
Hopefully there's a bigger one in the bedroom. And
That's what it was.
yeah, the corny humor is met with sort of improvisational humor, and then Keaton comes in and takes that just blows that out of the water.
And I mean, from what I understand, a lot of his stuff was improvised, like the scene where he's like describing, what have I been up to for the last 500 years? Well, let's see, I survived the plague. I'm pretty done with that. Like, that whole thing is supposedly improv.
I've read up to 90% of his performances improv. I don't know how true that is, but
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. You ever see Mr. Mom?
No. So this is why I watch Forbidden Zone, to avoid these moments.
That's okay.
Here we are.
No, it's another Michael Keaton movie from around that time in his career. And like, the joke is, Dad's got to stay home with the kids. He doesn't have a job anymore, and his wife does. Like, that's the joke. And it feels dated even for when it came out, but maybe in Reagan's America it wasn't. I don't know. I never see her as a villain. I don't think I see any of the Dietzes as villains in this. They're kind of unwitting foils to some extent. I don't know. Like, it at the end of the movie, like, it is just kind of a misunderstanding between them and I forget their names, the Gina Davis
Matlins, I think.
The Matlins. Yeah, and they kind of like learn to cooperate in, Beetlejuice, the villain. And the thing that I missed the most about Beetlejuice watching this as a kid is that he is a rapist.
Yeah.
Like,
it's actually, we talked about that before I watched the movie, and it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I think the thing that makes it okay is because they use it to make him grosser.
yes, that's true.
Yeah, it's not just like a punchline. It's like, you're told this character's kind of disgusting, and then he's kind of funny, and then he gets a little rapey, and you're like, no, he's disgusting. And that is the intention.
Yeah. In Ghostbusters, a lot of people lately have pointed out like how fucking creepy Bill Murray's character is in that movie. He's making some jokes about like bringing chloroform to their first date and stuff like that.
Gross.
But like, I've never understood that to be anything other than the character making a joke, not that the film is making a joke and that the character's doing that. You know what I mean? Like, the character is a character with a wry and inappropriate sense of humor. I think that's the point there. I don't think that anybody involved in that movie was sincerely thinking that they were writing, and character number 2 is kind of rapey.
Yeah. Well, I think Bill Murray's been very, very on the edge of being canceled a couple
No, he's
of
fully
times.
canceled. Yeah,
Is he now?
Pretty much. I mean,
I remember
he's a
we
huge
heard
piece
some
of shit.
stories back in the day before he was canceled. I don't know if he's actually been publicly canceled now, but
We're going to get into my Bill Murray conspiracies right now. This show just went off the motherfucking rails. You just tapped into my secret interest. So, yeah, Bill Murray is a terror and probably a pretty severe alcoholic, from what I understand. And he's a mean drunk. he has been very violent on set for almost his entire career.
Yeah.
Famously, he tried to murder Richard Dreyfuss with his bare hands on What About Bob, a movie which I maintain is not a comedy. And Richard Dreyfuss could not continue filming until they provided personal security for him.
Really?
Yeah, for real. Him, you know,
go. Give me
Bill
the tea.
Murray and Harold Ramis had a long career together, going back to Ghostbusters and in the Army. No, Stripes, great movie. I love that movie. They worked together, they were like a duo on the set of Groundhog Day, which Harold Ramis wrote and directed. They got into such a fight over the nature and direction of the film, because Bill Murray wanted the movie to be much darker than the direction and the script was taking it, that Bill Murray attempted to strangle Harold Ramis, and Harold Ramis had to defend himself by beating the shit out of Bill Murray. And like all of these things, I don't know who his agent was. Well, no, I do actually. His name is forgotten to me, but Bill Murray very famously had an agent for years who was like the inspiration for Ari Gold, like a high-powered ball-busting terror. And when he died, Murray could not replace this person, and instead famously got a voicemail set up where anybody could call him and leave a voicemail with a pitch for a movie, and at some point he might get back to you.
Oh, because no one wanted him.
Maybe. But the story always was that he couldn't find anybody who he wanted. And now I wonder if whoever this agent was keeping so many secrets for this guy and brushing shut under the rug and strong-arming people, you know, to keep quiet, to maintain his likable, affable image, that most of these things didn't come out. And I think it goes all the way back to SNL when him and Chevy Chase got into a fist fight. And Chevy Chase came out looking like shit, and Bill Murray came out smelling like a rose.
So this comes full circle around to your Chevy Chase is innocent apologism, which
Yes.
I can't quite get on board with. Because
That's fine.
Lot of
I don't
people
think
who've
Chevy
written
Chase
about
is
this.
innocent. I think
Okay.
Chevy Chase is an asshole.
Okay.
But I don't think he's a lot of the things people say about him. I don't think he's violent, and I don't think he's a rapist, and I don't think he's a creep. I just think he's a jerk.
Yeah, sure.
Which is fine, and I can make some apologies for that. And I could be wrong.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and I
yeah.
could be wrong, but like he does come from. So some things about Chevy Chase. First off, right?
We have just I just tapped this
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, this
That's what we're
nerve
doing
in your
now.
brain.
This is what we're doing now. Hour 2 of this podcast begins here. No, some things about him, right? So apparently abused as a child, grew up rich, smart guy, went to Harvard, wrote for the Lampoon,
Yeah.
and was in the Lampoon films, right?
Is that where that comes from?
The Harvard Lampoon was
And
a publication of...
I know what the Harvard Lampoon was. I never made the connection between that and National
You got to
Lampoon.
watch A Stupid and Futile Gesture about, and I forget his name, Doug Kenny, I think is Doug Kenny, was like the guy who created, took the Harvard Lampoon and turned it into the National Lampoon, a national publication, and then they made movies from that.
Awesome.
And then from that, you get all of those people that I just mentioned, and you also get 16 Candles.
Howard
Howard Hughes, yeah.
Howard Hughes. No, not Howard Hughes.
I know, I'm just fucking with you.
Hughes. John Hughes.
Yeah, John Hughes. He wrote the essay that became National Lampoon's Vacation, the vacation film.
This
So-
so comes back to Forbidden Zone and everything with like groups of people that start somewhere that get into movie. Yeah.
It's clubs, man. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
the UCLA film brats, the men with beards, as my friend Ari used to call them, they all went to college together, and then they made all of the movies we grew up on together. The thing about Chase is that he did always have a chip on his shoulder. And I just saw him talking about this in an interview where he was like, look, other people on SNL were more talented than me. Without a doubt, Dan Aykroyd was smarter and funnier than me. Without a doubt, John Belushi was more talented than me, right? But I was better looking, and it's honestly, it is true. Like, you know, and he says it with like regret. And they gave me Weekend Update, and I became the face of the show. And in those days, I was the person that the press was talking about, and everybody fucking hated me. And nobody will dispute that point. Like, yeah, we did fucking hate him because we saw him as a replacement for John Belushi, and nobody liked that about him. And then he had left SNL and had come back to host, and Bill Murray was on SNL, but he had not been on SNL when Chevy Chase had been on it. They had not really crossed paths all that much. And that's when like the rep that Chevy Chase got went bad, because Chevy Chase had quit SNL to pursue movies and also to spend more time with his wife. And Bill Murray was probably drunk, and they were backstage, and he made a crack at Chevy Chase. And then Chevy Chase is telling in this interview, probably thought I was like a rich kid who went to Harvard and didn't know how to fight. And to his credit, he grew up like in Chicago, busting skulls, and said something. I think that he said something like, "Yeah, man, why don't you fucking quit your hosting gig tonight and go back and fuck that wife of yours or whatever," because that's one of the reasons he gave was for quitting the show was to spend more time with his wife. And Chevy made a commentary about his horrible acne scars. And then Bill Murray swung at him, and they turned into a fight, and everybody loves Bill Murray. And everybody was looking for a reason to hate Chevy Chase. And I truly think that the hatred for Chevy Chase came from two places: Bill Murray's PR and whisper campaigns for years, and Chevy Chase's just lack of a desire to do anything to quell the rumors. It loved being an asshole.
Yeah. Everyone loves Billy Murray, meaning the audience, because that sounds like the cast members stood up
for
Bill Murray.
Yeah, no, a lot of he was a fun guy to be around, as a lot of those guys can be.
He was a terror, but a fun guy, and Chevy Chase was like, I just want to go home and hang out with my wife and kind of a dick.
I think he didn't really want to party.
And
a big part of that too is
cool kid.
He was a very cool kid. He was too cool. That's like I think what the problem was.
But
he wasn't a theater kid. He didn't want to hang out with the theater kids. And I think that if you watch A Stupid and Futile Gesture, the thing that comes out to me between the lines is that in about a 6-month period, every single one of Chevy Chase's best friends died, and he just never replaced them. I think he just never got new friends. And I think it turned him mean and bitter. And I think he comes from a world of comedy where people are kind of, they rib each other in a nasty way.
Yeah,
but it's not nasty. It's just like, it's just the way that, that green room gallows humor is.
Team. If you're not a part of the team, then you're gonna come off being hazed. Like you're going to.
I think he's kind of a hazing guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the main complaints that came, the modern incarnation of the "we hate Chevy Chase" stuff comes about from Community and stories that came from that, and
then Community happens years later.
And everybody's. I think you need to look into what people have said about that. I literally got into this with somebody online, and I was like, just cite the thing that you think he said. Just show me where you think he said it, where somebody is quoted as saying that, and you can't find it. And they said, well, here's an article, a headline,
right.
The racist history of Chevy Chase. It's about the town.
It's about the town.
It's about the town.
I think it's an interesting take on, it's at the very least, it's an interesting analysis of how that all has come apart. I would say the question probably starts. I think that the question probably starts with, why haven't I seen Chevy Chase more? And then they look up a couple of headlines. They see Chevy Chase as an asshole and they forget all about it. Yeah.
It turns out Bill Murray was the asshole all along.
And I really asked that question about Bill Murray. They just see him at Cubs games.
He's so cuddly looking. He's so cuddly.
We worked at a company with someone who worked with him directly, who said that they would never be left alone in a room with him, basically, that they found him.
I mean, I feel so bad for Aziz Ansari because he had that soft canceling and his career was finally getting back on track. He was directing his first feature with Bill Murray. And the production shut down because Bill Murray, I believe that I read, he had jacked off in his female co-star's tea. Which I think that's what it was, but also
why?
I got that from like maybe not the most reliable source.
Sure.
Like I also don't think that
now we're just like deep rumors.
But this is my point though. There are so many people protecting him that like no real article ever said what really happened there. He's like an untouchable guy.
Yeah.
Now if Chevy Chase had done that, you would know.
I'm going to say something and be a total asshole because I'm not going to allow us to go into it, but like Tom Cruise.
Oh no, Tom Cruise has slaves.
But that's the same thing. He's got this whole group of people.
He's a huge and
protecting
him,
shit, protecting his image. I don't even think he knows who he is anymore.
No, I don't think so either. And what kills me is that
devoid of reality.
He's so talented.
He is so
I've never
talented.
seen him deliver a lackluster performance. It's
so talented.
He doesn't need Scientology to pave the road for him. He's great.
Yeah.
He's actually great. He's so good.
Yeah, but he is devoid. Someone I know that was in the room with him was basically like, before he thinks it, someone knows to provide it. Like these people are so trained to be in tune with everything that he truly believes that
He has special
Like,
powers.
Yeah, special
Yeah.
powers just bring things to him. Yeah.
Magic man. He's a magic man.
How did we get here?
I got one more thing about Chevy Chase on Community. There was an article that Vulture put out, and they quoted Yvette Nicole Brown, who was in Community, as having had problems with Chevy Chase. And she got on Twitter and told them, you need to issue a retraction. I have never had a problem with Chevy Chase. I have a great time working with Chevy Chase, and I never said that. Don't put those words in my mouth. And I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like I said, I think he's...
At the very least, you think there's room to question.
I think he's an asshole. And I think he's a guy who's like, hey, I'm an asshole. I'm not going to try and convince you I'm not. Take it or leave it. You know,
Hard
like
to
he
work with. Yeah.
maybe a little difficult to work with, you know, whatever. But like, I think that's a lot different than, hey, I'm going to come to set drunk and try to murder you.
I agree. I feel in today's day in Hollywood, I've had to find my line with what I find acceptable and what I don't. And asshole is acceptable.
Now I remember how we got here.
Oh, go ahead.
We were talking about Beetlejuice being rapey. And then I was talking
Yeah.
about Ghostbusters, which led me to Bill Murray, which led us to Chevy Chase.
Yes, I think that's right.
That's what that was the 7 degrees.
You know,
I cut you off though, which was an asshole thing for me to
No,
do.
no,
A
it's
very
fine,
male
it's fine.
thing for me to do.
That's
I'm talking
very-
over the women in the room right now. No.
Very much the end of that thought. I would say this is what a good movie does. It gets you talking about other things. Whereas if you can't really find those connections, you just sit sort of giving a synopsis of the movie and you sort of talk in circles. Yeah, we talked about the movie and we're done. And I think great movies with great actors sort of lead you down all these rabbit holes of discussion that, I mean, we could probably keep going for another hour on this movie.
I think there's something neurological about it. I think
with
that
it,
like,
yeah.
oh, I love Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
It opens you. It turns on all your pathways. And now
Yeah.
everything's coming in and going. We could probably do 10 episodes on Beetlejuice.
Yeah, probably.
You can't stay on the rails on it. It's so good. Everybody loves this movie.
So are you excited, concerned? How do you feel about a sequel?
I never get excited for the release of anything.
Yeah.
I have no ability, and it's not like, oh, he's so good at protecting himself, don't believe the hype. No, I just don't have any ability to get hype. I'm just kind of dead inside in that way.
Yeah.
I will happily watch it. I hope good things.
Yeah.
I did see a thing in part of like the, online press for the movie where Michael Keaton was saying that we wanted to make this movie in secret. We wanted to just disappear and make it and then be like, it's done, and release it without any hype at all. They got close to that, but apparently they were not able to actually do that. But I think that's an interesting thing.
I have a couple points of concern. One being that.
Do you
this
think
is-
Jeffrey Jones will appear in it?
Well, no. I don't think so. No, I think that's safe. But when you were saying that about releasing it in secret, it made me randomly think of. Did you ever know that Will Ferrell and Kristen Wiig did a Lifetime movie together?
Yes.
And they were desperate for it to
watched
come
it.
out completely. Yeah, I watched it too. They're desperate, a deadly adoption, that's what it's called. They were desperate for it to be completely in secret, and it leaked out like maybe a week or two before it came out, and they almost tried to pull it because of that. I mean, they did not have the power to do that at that point, but they really, really did not want anyone knowing about it before it came out. This was a total aside that had nothing to do with
it's
where I
okay.
was going after that,
Yeah,
but
it's
a
great.
deadly adoption, wonderful Lifetime movie, if you ever get a chance. Burton has spoken about his dissatisfaction with the effects in this movie, and that I think is my main point of concern.
Counterpoint.
For the
Did he like the
new
effects in his version of Willy Wonka?
I don't know,
Because
I
if
have
he
to look.
liked that, the way that looked, then I would say it's a very good sign that he doesn't like the way this looks.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a lot of CGI. I think we're going to lose the tactile experience,
I think
and
that's
I
probably
think
true.
That'll immediately make me like the movie less. And I
bet.
know that's what I'm going to expect, and
Yep.
it's fine.
I
I also
would not-
think that calling it Beetlejuice means that there's an intention for a third,
Obviously.
because you have to
Obviously.
close the trio with Beetlejuice.
Obviously, there's a third. They probably already filmed it. There's a funeral in the trailer, and I assume it's Jeffrey Jones's character, Mr. Dietz.
I don't know if you really need to give him a death. I think you just forget about him.
You just don't have him exist. That would be safe because in a movie like Beetlejuice, if he's dead, he's still in the movie.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
That was what I was thinking. I was like, wait, how are they going to get rid of him? You can't even kill him.
I don't know if there's much else to say beyond that. And honestly, we've been talking on this for an hour and 20 minutes. I think that's, this in Forbidden Zone. But
yeah. This is like a twofer almost.
I miss watching a movie by a director and recognizing their work. I don't feel like I have that anymore.
So that's interesting to me. I kind of hate that.
You do?
Yeah. I think that, I mean,
you don't like the auteur.
Well, I don't have an auteur as a director who also writes their scripts. I have no problem with that.
I think it's more than that. I think it's a director that has a set in stone look, feel, vision that is recognizable. Doesn't mean it's the same from movie to movie.
Yeah.
I think that you have someone like Stanley Kubrick, who was an auteur whose movies look very different because he gets so obsessed and into a particular style of movie and needs to master it. But I don't. Can you think of anyone besides
Ridley Scott?
And who is still directing? Yes, I don't know if. Yeah, Quentin Tarantino just feels like he's worn out his. Shtick.
I'm sorry. I think that Ridley Scott is an example of a director who doesn't have an aesthetic.
Who's more like Kubrick?
I mean, he's an auteur, I would say. He has
but you don't
huge
necessarily
ownership,
watch one of his movies and say this is a Ridley Scott movie.
I think that could be true. I think he's a guy who can kind of do anything. I think Spielberg could do anything. I think, and that's what I mean is that like I kind of feel like Tim Burton is like a shtick to some extent.
Too shticky. Okay.
And he kind of tried to break out of that once with Big Fish, and I know a lot of people love that movie. I couldn't get into it for some reason. I should revisit it. I was young when I tried to watch it, or younger. I was like, what is this garbage? I don't want to have feelings. I don't need all these feelings in my shit.
That's a feel movie. That's still a feel movie. I don't think you're going to feel differently about it now.
I feel different about feelings now.
Okay.
A little bit. But I feel like if you're really competent, then like you shouldn't have to rely on having a signature look or vibe.
I don't know. I have to think on that for a while because I like it. It feels cozy to me. There's something I like about knowing. Yeah.
But like some of my favorite directors, like you could recognize a John Waters movie 1,000 miles away, in my opinion.
There you go. There's an example
Waters.
I agree with. Yeah. But I hear what you're saying about Ridley Scott, and I agree with that as well. There's something, but like Ridley Scott's aesthetic is mastery. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like, I know what I'm fucking doing here.
Yeah.
And then you have, but I do think that like he's a guy who like resisted the idea of an aesthetic because Blade Runner could have been his aesthetic. And I think that he specifically rebelled against that.
He does it for a movie and he does it so completely, but it doesn't dictate his next movie. Yeah.
I don't think there's like a look to a James Cameron movie, for example.
Yeah. Technology is his running thing.
Yeah. But I mean, on the other hand too, Cameron has directed, like the thing with Ridley Scott is that he has directed so many fucking movies that like you can look at the, like Tim Burton hasn't directed, he's done a fraction, he's done 10 movies or whatever. I don't know what it is, but Ridley Scott's directed like 90 movies or something.
But that's valid. I mean, yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is that like maybe if Ridley Scott had only ever done 10 movies in his career, you would say, there's an aesthetic there. He's just done so much that like it's all averaged out. I don't know.
Some people would argue that there's a lot of mess in there. There's a lot of great stuff, but there's also some mess in there.
No, Ridley's got a lot of misses. I mean, no, don't get me wrong. His movies are not always great.
As the sun has gone down, I've gotten so grainy looking.
You're
at
out. You're in the dark, man.
I know.
You're in the dark.
I apologize. I don't have a lot that I can do about it right now.
I'm in a studio. You're in the dark. No, I don't think all of his movies work, Ridley Scott, but I do think that they're all quite daring. I like his films. Anyway, this was another tangent that we absolutely didn't need to go on. We had the button. We were done. I mean, this might even be a short that we do something else with. Let's
do something
fucking
else
kill this episode. This has been Midnight Local, the podcast about I don't even know anymore, but there's movies in there sometimes. I'm Greg, and she's
Meredith.
And this is my radio voice saying good night and good luck. And I'm going to burp. And you should listen to our
It was
podcast.
Beetlejuice. You should have just let it rip. That would have been very fitting.
You know how many burps I've been choking back over here? It's unreal.
I do, because I've been on set with you for How to Drink. So I actually, yes, I do know.
It's brutal. It's brutal. Please listen to this podcast wherever you get them. I promise not to burp in your ear holes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.